Today is December 29th, 2014. I'm here with Melissa Harris.
Hi, my name is Melissa Harris. I live in Weathersfield, Connecticut. I contacted Corrupt CT because I feel it's important that my story needs to be told about what's going on with my 3-year-old daughter with DCF and the family court system. And I feel it's important that the truth comes out where they're hiding lies about the abuse that's going on with my child. And I'm concerned about her safety, health, and well-being.
Now you've said that you have a gag order placed on you.
Yes, and I have 2 gag orders placed on me by Judge Romanoff from Middletown Court, Connecticut, and Judge Avery Whetstone from New Britain Court in Connecticut.
And when were those put on you?
One, Judge Romanoff put the gag order on me, I want to say in October, this past October 2014, and Avery Whetstone had just put one on me about a week and a half ago, which is in December 2014, which I feel that the reason why they put the gag orders on me is because they're trying to conceal the truth of the lies that they're covering up about the abuse of my 3-year-old daughter. And I feel that I have constitutional First Amendment rights that I have asserted numerous times over and over again that they are violating, and it's a freedom of speech, and I want to be heard. And I think other parents should also come forward as well about what's going on, because children cannot be replaced.
And I agree with you on that. Now, what happened in 2012 with DCF?
2012, my cat had passed away, and my mother she thought it was appropriate to get my older daughter, who was 11 at the time, a family pet, because I had just had a baby who had just turned 7 months old. And prior to that, she went to a pet store in Connecticut, and they actually sold a sick dog, said it was the type of breed it was. The dog had a parasite infection and had mites, which ended up giving my children scabies and a parasite infection, where they were diagnosed, and I took them to the children's hospital. And as I was leaving the children's hospital, I was not feeling well due to major surgery. And as I was leaving, I went back to the hospital where I had the major surgery, and I had paperwork in the car. I drove myself there. And when I got to the hospital, they turned around, took over paperwork, they twisted words around, and they said there was no parasite infection, that it was nothing was wrong with my stomach, and it was in my head. They said I didn't have surgery at that hospital, which is St. Francis Hospital in Connecticut, and they said I am being committed against my will, and they contacted DCF and took my kids.
Now you said you have proof that you did have the parasite.
Yes, I had proof in the car that my children were diagnosed with a parasite infection.
As were you? As
myself.
And you did have surgery at St. Francis Hospital?
I had gastric bypass surgery that was done wrong at St. Francis Hospital in 2005.
Okay.
Where I've had numerous complications, and Hartford Hospital took over to correct the problems that St. Francis had caused.
Okay, so you have DCF and family court involvement here.
Yes.
Now, you had mentioned when they had committed you because they thought this parasite was in your head.
Yes, that was non-existent. And
okay.
When I had got out, I proved that the dog was tested with Giardia and had a parasite infection that had given my kids as well as myself a parasite infection.
Okay, and during that time, DCF was contacted?
I was committed and put into the psychiatric ward because they said there was no parasite infection and there was nothing wrong with my stomach, and it was in my head. And they contacted DCF and took both my children from me. And I placed my kids with my family, and the DCF worker had given my daughter's father a drug test that he failed, and took my 7-month-old child that I was breastfeeding out of my cousin's care, threatened me to sign papers that I did not agree to, and placed it with the father, who was a abusive and had a history with drugs, and he failed the test.
But they still allowed the child to stay there.
Yes, they placed her with him.
And I know we won't get to all of this now, but the child is still currently with this man, the father of the child.
They actually placed her in foster care, licensed his mother that they know has been hitting her, and placed her back in his care, knowing she's being abused. Numerous reports were made to the hotline, and they feel that none of this is important, and they fail to open up any investigations. And every investigation that they have opened up, they came out unsubstantiated. And I have numerous evidence that's been withheld and overlooked by both DCF and the family court.
Now, DCF is the New Britain?
New Britain DCF, Hartford Family Court, and we had went to trial in between at Middletown Court.
Okay. Now, with the New Britain DCF, who did you have for workers?
I've had numerous workers, which I can name a few workers off the top.
Were they good to you?
No, there was numerous fabricated statements, false statements, twisted words. They've lied. They've actually, a few workers committed perjury.
You spoke about one, Aaron.
Aaron Huber was the DCF worker that came to the hospital the night of January 24th, 2012, that gave my daughter's father a drug test, which he failed. And she did not do a proper investigation as well of the house.
Okay. Now, what judges have you been in front of? I know you said Avery Whetstone.
Avery Whetstone is the last judge from New Britain Court that put the gag order on me. Judge Romadal from Middletown Court put the first gag order on me.
And then you had from Hartford?
From Hartford, where it went after I proved that there was a parasite infection when I got out of the WAC ward psychiatric unit, because I proved that there was a parasite infection. I was able to get my children back, but my daughter, who was 7 months old at the time, was able to get her, and the father denied me her, which the worker, I found out later on, had told him to go to court and file for custody. I went to court. I tried to put a restraining order and was denied by the judge, Judge O'Lear.
Judge O'Lear?
Yes, from family court. And she has denied every order that I have tried to put in and overlooked numerous concerns, overlooking evidence, and leaving my daughter in harm's way.
So you've had Judge O'Lear, Avery Whetstone. Did you have Judge Bizzuto?
I had Judge Bizzuto, which I filed a temporary restraining order in 2013. I also, the original attorney I hired for custody was Melissa Osborne, who was the same attorney that represented me for DCF, who helped me get my child back, or both my children back. My older daughter at the time was 11, and my youngest was 7 months. And when I hired her for custody, she withheld evidence and threatened me to sign papers that I didn't agree to.
Now, you did get your children back.
I got my oldest daughter back March 21st, 2012, and my youngest, who was 7 months, that I was breastfeeding, I was supposed to get back that day, and the father denied me. There was no court order in place. DCF was supposed to, the case was closed at DCF, but the worker refused to shut the case. That was Jessica Ocasio. After I got my kids back, I went to federal court and I had filed a federal complaint on them. And I feel because I filed a federal complaint on them that I'm being retaliated against because I want to speak out about what's been going on.
And I commend you for doing that. Not a lot of parents do that.
I tried to report, there was domestic violence, and I didn't want to report it at the time because I was trying to protect my children and I was scared. And they turned around and said because I didn't report it, there's no proof of anything, even with witnesses, documentation, pictures, that doesn't matter.
So they were just leaving it as it was?
They left it as it was, and left my daughter, Melissa Osborne, and attorney Eugene Sullivan had nonstop slandered my name, wrote false things. Like I said, evidence has been withheld. They knew about the abuse and put my daughter's life in serious danger.
And is her life still in serious danger?
Yes, because evidence was withheld, I asked the court to appoint an ad litem,
a guardian ad litem?
A guardian ad litem, a G.A.L, because the attorney that had forced me to sign papers that I didn't agree to actually made matters worse. I went out, hired another attorney that absolutely did nothing, just continued continued orders that were never heard. I've had numerous pictures of injuries, documentation.
And I did see a dozen, maybe almost 2 dozen pictures of bruises on your daughter that...
We got joint custody, and I had primary, and every time that she went with the father and she returned home to me, she would come back with nonstop injuries.
But you had shared with me that you had supervised visits.
At first. For the first, from January or February until May, I had supervised visits with my daughter, with my youngest daughter, who was in the father's care at the time.
No.
And then I was able to get joint custody.
Okay. So do you have... Where is it? The visitation now? Do you have...
I had primary residence, and he had her on Wednesday night and weekends. And the ad litem that was appointed by the court, the G.A.L, I tried to have removed because he had discriminated against me from the start, overlooked evidence. I had given him numerous pictures of injuries. My daughter had a milk allergy that the father and his family kept giving her dairy, causing her to have allergic reactions. DCF overlooked this. The court overlooked this. I filed for contempt orders, which have never been heard and just continued. The judge denied the removal for the guardian ad litem.
What judge was that?
Judge O'Lear.
Okay.
Which she's denied everything. Attorney Sullivan had said that Judge O'Lear didn't want to hear anything from me, that he's known her for years and whatever he says she's going to agree with because she's known him for years.
That's been said a lot of times. I've heard this many times that, they all stick together.
Yes.
The G.A.Ls, the attorneys, the judges. I'd like to believe that it's not true, but the more and more that I hear, the less and less I believe that it isn't going on. I believe that it is. So to date, as of today, do you have supervised visitation with your daughter?
The ad litem had filed, actually the ad litem I overheard talking to Attorney Sullivan, who was my daughter's father's attorney in family court, and Sullivan and him were talking about to file certain stuff that would make it look better for them at court, and they were laughing and joking around, and Chris Oakley had filed a false neglect petition on me with numerous false statements that I have evidence on and witnesses.
Now that's the G.A.L. What was the name?
This is the G.A.L.
What was his
Chris
name?
Oakley. Attorney Chris Oakley from Middletown, Connecticut.
Okay.
And he's also in the United States Coast Guard.
Wow.
He had filed a false neglect petition, which I had enough evidence where it shouldn't even have gone to court, and that evidence was withheld. A dentist that was involved had made a false call to DCF saying I refused medical treatment, which I did not. The doctor at the trial testified, stating that there was no person from his office that worked there by that name. And then a couple weeks after that, or maybe a month later, Chris Oakley again had filed a false OTC order. Prior to that, I had went and filed an ex parte order on my younger daughter, who's 3 years old, because I put my daughter in therapy and she was making sexual comments, and the therapist had mentioned it to me. And when the therapist had told me, I went to the court and filed a restraining order, which it was granted, I want to say by Judge Fazzino. And it was supposed to be for 2 weeks, and I went back on the 2-week hearing, and it was Judge Dolan that was supposed to hear the restraining order, and he didn't want to hear anything I had to say. I was not heard. He did not swear Chris Oakley in, and he dropped the restraining order and put my daughter's life at risk. And after he dropped the restraining order, Chris Oakley had talked to Attorney Sullivan from Family Court that showed up, that was not even supposed to be part of this, and was laughing in the hallway, and after that he filed a OTC order with false statements.
An OTC is an order of temporary custody.
To give to DCF.
Yes. And I don't find any of this funny. I don't know how anybody could.
They said that I'm coaching my child, which I'm not. My daughter has been making comments from the time that she's been talking and has had numerous injuries. I have over 200 pictures of open sores, black and blues, scratches, bug bites that DCF has overlooked. I have numerous documentation from doctor's reports, upper respiratory infections.
That were untreated and such like that.
After she came back from the father's care and his family's care, she was nonstop injured,
and DCF is aware of your major concern.
Yes, and they've overlooked everything, and they've found no concerns. Everything has been unsubstantiated, but my daughter's father also has ties in the system. And
you said with New Britain Court.
With New Britain Court. I found out his girlfriend works as a domestic violence advocate or child advocate. I don't know if she works there anymore. His brother's girlfriend works for Whaler Clinic that's affiliated with New Britain DCF, and the Quest laboratory that does the drug tests, which he had failed. But then in family court, 2 months after he did the urine test, he had went for a body hair test and passed, which is impossible.
Now, Melissa, can I ask you, do you have a criminal history?
I have no record whatsoever.
Does the father of your child, your 3-year-old, have a criminal history?
He has.
You don't have to elaborate, but just yes or no.
Just 2 DUIs.
Okay.
Under drugs and alcohol.
Okay, and you have nothing like that?
No, nothing at all. They keep saying my mental health, but my mental health, I have post-traumatic stress due to DCF and domestic violence. And my father also committed suicide with a .357 Magnum and blew his head off in front of me at the age of 4. And DCF has non-stop used this against me from the time that I was younger until now. Which, post-traumatic stress is not a mental illness. It's an injury caused by trauma that you go through, which numerous veterans have this as well, but that's not being thrown in their face. And it's also against the law to use mental health against somebody, and it's also a violation of the American Disability Act.
Well, you were a very educated woman, and
I've had to learn because I have to represent myself because the attorneys do not do anything.
And I feel you've had paid attorneys that really
have done nothing but made matters worse. They've withheld evidence, and I feel that from doing a lot of studies that what's going on is my child as well as numerous other child are being trafficked through the system for profit.
Many have said that as well, that the Kids for Cash scandal, they get federal funding for children that they can get into the state's care.
Yes.
Under DCF, and it's very sad because these children are left with scars for life.
Yes, they're traumatized, and it's going to cause long-term effects, and they don't care. And in family court, I had mentioned domestic violence, and once domestic violence was mentioned, they cover it up. And they automatically place your child with the abuser.
That is yet one other thing that I have heard many, many times. And it's disturbing. It's disturbing. It's sick.
It's also going against the national thing for domestic violence. And myself, I'm not a spiteful or vengeful person. I believe children should have two parents if they're both fit. But when there's abuse involved, for the safety of the child's well-being and health and just mental health overall, the child should not be placed with the abuser. And especially when the child is still being abused, whether physically, sexually, mentally, that child should not be in harm's way for any amount of profit. And that's what they're doing. And this is why I had to come public with my story, because they're covering abuse. And they've placed gag orders on me, but I don't care, because I cannot replace my child.
And you're not saying, and you said this, it's not that you're saying, you don't care to the judges. You are just saying that you have the First Amendment right.
I have constitutional rights, and I'm asserting my rights, and I feel my rights should be protected, as well as my children's rights.
And how else can you do that without speaking?
You can't.
And
you can't.
You
have
made
to come
it very
forward.
clear to me, and you asked when we spoke, and we've been in conversation for quite a while now, and you made it clear when you asked, can I continue? I don't want to just do one story.
No, I want to go forward with everything. And I'm taking a risk because my daughter's father is unpredictable, and I'm taking a risk of my life being jeopardized because there's numerous people that come forward and they're retaliated against, as well as numerous people have lost their life because they tried to expose the truth on what's going on in this system.
Do you fear for your life?
Yeah, kind of.
You do?
Yeah. With my ex, yes. And now with the family court and DCF, yes.
It really bothers me when you had said that one of the judges made a statement to you that they didn't care what you had to say. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes, I asserted my constitutional rights, as well as my child's constitutional rights, also about her health, and everything is being overlooked. The district attorney general has nonstop slandered my name.
Do you know the name of
Jessica Torres.
Jessica Torres.
There's also another one, I don't remember her name offhand, but I can get that. And when I filed the federal complaint at the Hartford District Court on the 3 DCF workers, Aaron Huber, Regina something, started with an S, and Jessica Ocasio, Niles Davey is the District Attorney General for George Jepson, and he's representing DCF. And I didn't know what a federal claim was at the time I filed the complaint, but I did a lot of research, and he had told me that he wanted me to speak to him instead of going before the judge. And at that time I learned what a federal complaint or a federal claim was, and I had told him everything, and what he had done was he turned everything I said against me and filed it against me on saying I filed a false thing on the DCF workers, that they did nothing wrong. And I have numerous verification, evidence and witnesses that they have done numerous things wrong, and Niles Davey has made numerous false statements in the complaint order, which I have to amend and object to. I just am having trouble because I don't know how to file correctly.
Well,
but more importantly than anything is my children's safety. And my 14-year-old daughter actually had just testified against the DCF worker, and now I feel that she's being retaliated against because the DCF worker had just filed a false neglect petition with numerous false statements on her, stating that they're concerned with her mental health, and my daughter is fine, she's doing good, she made general honors, she teaches part-time catechism, she has a lot of friends. The only thing that...
No trouble?
No, she's no trouble in school, she's a happy-go-lucky kid, but they
I've met her, she's very polite, beautiful young lady.
But they have been up her rear end of my end since the time that she's been 2 years old, and she missed a lot of school, she had surgeries, and I was charged with educational neglect in the past. And actually Melissa Osborne was the attorney representing me in 2010. When I found out I was pregnant, I wanted to go to trial. She told me to plead nolo, and at the time I did not know what nolo meant. But she said because I was pregnant with my daughter, for the safety of my daughter and the well-being for myself, that I should plead nolo, which I did. And because of that, their statements have been on record, which I've been trying to clear numerous times, and
have been unsuccessful.
They were refused to give me my records. But when I was representing myself in family court, I was able to go through the records and notice there's numerous false statements, which actually Attorney Sullivan knew that there were false statements, which I've had told him, and he took notes knowing that they were false statements and submitted them as evidence in the court to use to cover up his client and to cover up the abuse. And he has nonstop slandered my name. He tried to put Munchkin syndrome on me, saying my mental health...
Munch-Child syndrome?
Yeah, syndrome.
It's hard to say, yes.
Because I kept bringing my daughter to the doctors because every time she returned home to me, she had injuries and was nonstop sick. And as a concerned parent, the behaviors that she was doing and the upper respiratory infections...
And the milk allergy.
And the milk allergy, that they were nonstop giving her milk, causing her to have nonstop diarrhea, projectile vomiting, the respiratory infections, the asthma.
You were just doing
I just
your job
felt that I
as
was
a
trying to
parent.
protect my daughter, and I was concerned about her safety and well-being because I can't replace her. Now what's happening is they had rotted her teeth out by giving her a lot of sweets, which I've asked her, I have asked them, please do not give her sweets. Her teeth ended up getting rotted, and what's happening, actually the dentist, Dr. Miner, had lied under oath. Now they want to pull the front 4 teeth out. She's 3 years old, they are not infected, there's no abscesses, no pain, and they want to put 11 crowns on the bottom teeth. They also know that my daughter has a rare form of sleep apnea, that and in my family there's a pseudocholinesterase deficiency where you're at high risk for anesthesia and reaction. My grandmother had passed away, my other family member had went into a coma, and I've had a reaction as well to anesthesia, and the doctor had testified stating that she is at high risk, that she could actually die under anesthesia. And Jessica Torres had put a motion in for the court, which the court I think granted, for me not to be at her medical appointments, and they're trying to go forward with the surgery to pull her 4 front teeth out and to do crowns on her bottom teeth, knowing that she could die.
Did you lose medical decision making?
Not offhand that I know of, but Jessica Torres is trying to do that. And it's my constitutional right, I think it's the 5th Amendment, that I have a right to live free of government interference, as well as I don't need the government to second guess my best decision on what's best decision for my children against American repugnance. And I also have Native American history, or Native Indian history, in my family background that DCF is denying, as well as both my children.
So they're ignoring that. And
yes, they're ignoring that. I think it's Tuckahoe, but it's part of the Cherokee tribe.
That's a big...
Or Apache tribe. It's something to do with one of the tribes, but I'm not a member of the tribe.
But you still have the blood.
Yes, we have the blood in our history.
Melissa, I give you so much credit for speaking out, and I know that you're going to be an inspiration for a lot of parents to do so.
They're saying my mental health, but I am not on any medication. I have not been on any medication, and I have never snapped. Although I've wanted to, but I just breathe through it, and I have somewhat of a sense of humor, and I've used that to get by.
And with the communication that I've had from you, your behavior, your mannerism, your emotion has always stayed the same.
I have a lot of support from my family. I have support from Connecticut Corrupt CT. I have support from people that are actually going through similar situations from the family court and DCF. Their children have been stolen from them or robbed of their private property, which I say I've been robbed of my private personal property because I'm my children's natural mother and these are my offspring. And
you
I'm
have
their mother.
You have the civil right to be a parent.
Yes.
Can you just share with us briefly when your children were taken and you were in your car?
The DCF worker, actually, August 1st, 2014, I went for the restraining order hearing, which Judge Dolan did not listen to or hear me or didn't want to hear anything.
Did he say that?
Yeah. He said, I'm not listening to anything. I'm not hearing anything. I actually brought a witness with me who heard everything. He dropped the restraining order. I had seen the DCF worker in the hallway. She said, I am so sorry. I agree with you. Nobody should be hitting your child. And then she came out to the house. She turned around and said, DCF doesn't do supervised visits. I'm sorry. We can't help you. We don't find any concerns. We're not doing anything. It's a custody matter. She got a phone call and says, okay, I have to get back to the office before 5 o'clock. I didn't want to send my daughter with her father because I was scared because she had made sexual comments and she was still being abused physically with the black and blues. But at the same time, I didn't want to go against a court order, and I'm just, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. She actually left the house. I went to go to Target with my daughter, with both my daughters, my 14-year-old and my youngest, who is 3. And as I was leaving, I was driving down the street after I strapped my daughter up, and a cop, a Wethersfield police officer, who his name is Officer Murphy, which I found out later on, had cut me off and drove at me, risking my children's lives. And there was no sirens. He ended up putting the lights on, but at the same time, when he cut me off and drove at me, there was no lights on, and I was like, oh my God, what is this guy doing? And I told my oldest daughter to hold her sister's car seat, and I reversed it because I just passed a side street, not even that far. I reversed it, I drove down the side street, not even 20 seconds. I parked my car. The cop, the officer came up to me, the Wethersfield police officer, Officer Murphy. I said, what are you doing? Why are you cutting me off? He said, the GCF worker called and made a report that you were running with your child. And I said, I'm not running with my child. Here's my court order. I'm on my custody time, which I have primary residence. I explained that the judge, I just came from the court in New Britain, that the judge dropped the restraining order. I explained that I'm very concerned about my daughter's health because of what was just said about the comments that she made to her therapist. And that's
your younger child.
My 3-year-old, that she made sexual comments to the therapist, and that's why I put the restraining order. But Dolan dropped it, like he dropped the one that I tried to have in 2013 to protect her. So he had told me, Miss, get out of the car, and I said, I am not getting out of the car you're violating my constitutional rights as well as my daughter's constitutional rights. He said, Miss, get out of the car. He put his hands on my car, tried to open the door, and I rolled up the windows, and I said, take your hands on my car. You're a public servant. DCF is a corporation. Show me a court order. He did not show me a court order. I told him, I said, DCF was just at my house stating there was nothing they can do. Sorry, it's a custody matter. She never showed me a court order, never mentioned anything about a court order. I said, DCF is an entity and a corporation. This is kidnapping, and what you're doing is conspiracy to kidnapping. I have a right to these children who are mine, who I carried and I gave birth to. Take your hands out of my car. He put his hand on his gun and told me to get out of the car. And I said, what are you going to do, shoot me in front of my children? He took his hand off his gun, told me to get out of the car. I said, no, I'm not giving you my children. My youngest daughter, that's who he was saying that DCF said they have an order for. And I said, show me a court order. And I said, as far as this court order, I know that the G.A.L filed, or I think he filed one, but he filed a false one, if he did file one, on what DCF is saying, because he's working with my daughter's father's attorney from family court, who has made non-stop false statements. And I want to press charges on him because I can guarantee they're false statements, and he's risking my daughter's life knowing that my daughter is being abused, and he's doing this out of spite and retaliation to help my daughter's father, the attorney. Just like he filed the last false one. The officer then called back up on me, surrounded my car, and put stuff under my tires. I did not have keys in my car. I took the keys out of the ignition. I was crying, but at the same time I held it together. My 14-year-old daughter had told the officers what my younger daughter's father had did to her about the abuse, saying that he grabbed the wheel when I was driving with my kids in the car. It was punching the dashboard, and he swerved it at another car. And my daughter tried to call 911 at the time, and he smashed her cell phone. And instead of me reporting it to the police department, I felt I had to protect my children. And at that point, he was unpredictable, and this was in December 2011. And then after that, when he filed for custody, my daughter had told Aaron Huber that he had did drugs because of the fact he accused her, my 11-year-old at the time, of taking his bag. Had her empty out her backpack, accused her. He took her by the back of the shirt, threw her up the stairs, and told her he was going to choke her and beat the shit out of her. And I didn't know this at the time that happened.
I know you're.
It's a little bit nerve-wracking, and I have anxiety thinking about it because.
Yes, and I see the emotion in your face.
Because after that...
What happened with the officer after they surrounded you? They put things...
Actually, my cousin showed up. My daughter called my cousin. I was actually, the whole time that the officers surrounded my car, I was on the phone with my mother telling her what was going on. And then I called an attorney.
These children must have been so scared.
My little one was smiling. I tried to keep her calm, and it was hot, but I was putting water on her, and she was like...
You were protecting your
yeah, I refused to get my daughter. My brother actually showed up because my mother had told him to come there. I wanted him to take the kids back to my house, or to take them to my family's to get them out of there because I was trying to protect them.
Did they take the children? Did he take the daughter?
No, the officers told my brother to leave the premises, to go to my house, or they were going to tase him.
All right, well, we're going to cut this a little bit short.
But no court order was shown at all by DCF or the officers, and I was forced after that to give my 3-year-old to DCF.
That day?
Right after that, yes.
We will be hearing more from you. You demanded that when we spoke. So
it's a little bit nerve-wracking. Bear with me, because
I know there's so much going on.
It's almost as you relive it every time you talk
Tell
about it.
Yes, and
But at the same time, I have to, because I have to get what's going on out there in order to protect my child, because now DCF wants to place her permanently with him. And she, every time I see her at the visits, she's begging me to come home. And actually DCF told the person doing the supervised visits, he's not allowed to report the bruises, otherwise my visits are going to be cut short or canceled.
That's just wrong.
And
Melissa, I thank you
pictures.
so much. The battery on this camera is about to go, but I know I will be meeting with you within the next couple of days. I hope that you and your courage has given
I hope other
somebody
people come
else.
forward.
Yes, because
this is the only way that we're going to be able to protect our children, as well as many other children out there.
is telling the truth.
Is coming forward. That's the only way. That's the only way to do it, to get these kids protected. And don't be scared. If I can do it, anybody can do it.
And I commend you for, doing all the things you've done to try to protect your children. And you have irrefutable proof.
I have
and
tons of documentation.
We've gone through it, and you know what?
And I also have witnesses that are willing to come forward to speak on what they've seen and what they've witnessed.
I wish you the best of luck, but we will be in touch, and with all of your documentation.
Thank
that
you
is
for
key.
talking to me, because it's a little bit of relief.
And we will continue to let everybody know what's going on in your case. This is again Melissa Harris.
I feel that there's a lot of corruption going on.
They say Connecticut is one of the most corrupt states.
We are living in Corrupticut. It's not Connecticut, it's unconstitutional Corrupticut. You have no rights when you walk through the courts.
I don't know how you've done this without any tears, but
because I cry every day at night to go to sleep, and you just kind of
you're gonna
breathe
be okay.
through it.
You're gonna be okay. And thank you so much.
I have faith that I'm gonna get my daughter back. I have to go forward.
With what you have,
I won't stop fighting until I have my daughter home with me.
And I wish there was more parents out there with the courage.
And once I do have my daughter home with me, I will fight to protect other kids as well. I'll be a voice for other children.
Because you know what? These children don't have a voice.
No.
We need to be their voice.
Absolutely.
So thank you, and
they have a voice and it needs to be heard. So.
Absolutely. So we'll be talking soon?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Melissa.
you.